Hello everyone, and today we will talk about how to stop and restart an EC2 instance and what happens when you stop and restart an EC2 instance. So as you see on my screen, I have a Linux instance over here. The instance type is T2 Micro. It's in US EC2. The instance is currently running and all the status checks for the instance have passed. Now what we will be doing today is we will be stopping this EC2 instance and then restarting it. Now before we go ahead with stopping the instance, let's just check out some more additional properties. So as you see, the AMI that I'm using is the Amazon Linux AMI that is associated. This instance does have a root device, which is an EPS backed root device type associated with it as well. Along with that, let's notice a couple of other properties over here, like the public DNS. This is the public DNS of this particular instance. Now this instance is currently launched in my default VPC, and as you might already be knowing that the default VPC has public subnets, and I have auto assign public IP enabled or set to true. Hence you see that a public IP address has been associated with this particular instance, and this is the associated public IP. Along with the public IP, you will also notice that this particular instance has a private DNS associated with itself, and this is the private IP address. This is the VPC ID of my default VPC, and this is one of the subnets in my default VPC, which is essentially a public subnet. And rest of the other attributes and properties are the same. So let's move further ahead. Under status checks, you will notice that the system status check as well as the instance status check, both of them have passed clearly, and you do see over here as well that 2x2 checks have passed. My account, this particular account is a free account, hence you will see that I do have some basic monitoring going on, and I just launched this instance like a few minutes back to kind of capture some information over here. So you see some basic CPU utilization and a couple of other metrics being captured over here in the past last hour. I have one tag associated with this instance. The tag name is the tag key is name, and the tag value is Linux. So coming back to the description tab, let's capture a couple of attributes over here. So let's first capture the public IP address of this particular instance. Okay, so this is the current public IP, and then let's go ahead and capture the private IP as well. This is the private IP. Now let's go ahead and stop this instance, and let's see what happens when we stop this instance. So the moment you select go to instance state and click on stop, you will get a note. So let's do that. Now this is the note that I was talking about. Now this note clearly says that any data on the ephemeral storage of your instance will be lost. Now what does the word ephemeral mean over here? Ephemeral means anything that is temporary or anything that is short-lived. Now any data that is there in the instance storage or the instance store of your instances will be lost, and this essentially happens because whenever you stop and restart an EC2 instance, it essentially actually starts, or gets, in this case, restarts on a new or a different host. Okay, it does not restart on the same host that was there earlier. So essentially what you are doing is you are actually changing the underlying hosting host of this particular EC2 instance. Now this is something very, very important for you to keep in mind, especially if you are working towards your certification, because this question does come up very frequently in the certification as to what happens when you stop and restart an EC2 instance. So one of the key things that happens is that the underlying ephemeral storage or the instance storage that is associated with that instance, any data that is stored on this ephemeral storage will be lost. Okay, so please keep this in mind. Now let's go ahead and stop this instance. So we'll click on yes, stop. And the moment you click on that and try and refresh it, you will see that the instance state is changed to stopping, and continue to kind of refresh this information. And after a while you will notice that this particular public IP and the DNS will no longer be associated with this particular EC2 instance. So let's go back and refresh, and there it is. So as you see that the public DNS and the public IP that was associated with this particular EC2 instance is no longer associated with this EC2 instance anymore. Okay. At the same time, if you go and click on status checks, you will see that the status checks are no longer checked passed at this time because the instance is no longer reachable. Okay, the monitoring is still there. This is some old data that is there, but essentially the monitoring is also going to stop, and the tags remain the same. Okay, one thing that does stay with the EC2 instance, although it is stopped, is the private IP address. So if you see, if I copy this private IP address again, you will see that the IP address remains the same. So this remains the same. Okay, the same private IP address is associated to the EC2 instance irrespective of whether it's running or whether it is stopped, unlike the public IP address, which is immediately revoked or disassociated or from the EC2 instance. Okay, now let's go ahead and restart this EC2 instance. Okay, so let's go back to actions, go to instance state, and then click on start. I'll give you a small pop-up that whether you want to start the instance, yes or no. Click on yes over here, and as you will see, the instance state immediately changes to pending, and the status checks are basically initializing. And if you go back over here and if you hit the refresh, you will see that it is in an initializing state right now. Okay, so as you see, the instance state has changed to running. Okay, and now you do have a new public DNS. So let's go back to the description tab, and you will see that a new public IP address has been associated with our EC2 instance. So let's copy this. As you see, the IP address remains the same. The public IP address has changed, but the private IP address still remains the same. It is still 172.30.134.73, but the public IP address has clearly changed from what it was earlier. Okay, so let's put these together and let's bring these two together. One of the key questions that does show up in the exam, especially in the associates exam, is that if you have hosted your website on an EC2 instance and you have shared its public IP address with the external vote or any third party, and you happen to stop and restart the instance, what will happen? Now what will happen in this case, as you can clearly see, is that that website will no longer be reachable using that specific IP, public IP address. Okay, because every time you stop and restart an EC2 instance, the public IP address changes. Hence, it is actually not even advisable to share the public IP address or the public DNS of the EC2 instance. And instead of sharing the public IP address, it would be far more advisable to associate an elastic IP address with your EC2 instance and then share the elastic IP address with the external third parties. Okay, so let's go back and refresh it, and as you see, the status checks are still initializing. So it kind of takes a little while. So let's try and refresh it again and again. So I'll wait for a couple of minutes. If not, I'll just pause the video, and then once all the status checks are completed, I will resume the recording again. Okay, so I'm going to temporarily go ahead and pause the video and then resume it again in a little bit. So as you see, our instance state is currently running. All our checks have passed, and the system status check as well as the instance status check, both of them have check passed successfully, and our instance is running back again. So just to give a quick recap, first is that whenever you stop and restart an EC2 instance, any data that is stored, especially in its ephemeral storage. Ephemeral means anything that is temporary, anything that is short-lived, all of that data will be lost. That is the first thing, and that happens because whenever you stop and restart an EC2 instance, the underlying host of the EC2 instance changes. The second thing that will happen is the public IP associated, especially if the EC2 instance is launched in a public subnet, the associated public IP address with the EC2 instance will also change. Also remember that the private IP address of the EC2 instance will remain the same. And the third thing that will happen is that every time you stop and restart the EC2 instance, all the status checks will be initialized all over again. Okay. I hope that this video was helpful to you. Please provide any feedback, comments at the bottom. If you would like me to make videos on any specific topic, please do post it down in the comments as well. If you would like to know what new videos I am creating or what new videos I have created, please subscribe to my channel, and see you next time with some other video. Thank you and have a nice day.